if I can have your undivided attention, okay? Nobody needs to multitask. This is a very important principle I wanted to share with you here today, okay? Now, I hope that you all grab a pen and paper so you can take some notes, okay? And also, I want to encourage you to log into the screen share. That way you can see my screen, because I do have some pictures as well as my whiteboard, okay? That way you can get the full effect. All right? Perfect. So let's get started. So today I wanted to talk about the system that we are using, right? The sales system, and how it correlates to having a harvest in the natural, okay? So how many of you, when you got your insurance license, you got it because the person that recruited you convinced you that you can make a lot of money, right? That's the reason why you got in. Either you were convinced that you could have a lot of money, or you could have more time with your family, more freedom, right? More of something. Is that right? So basically, they convinced you that the financial services industry is how you can have a big harvest in your life, right? Whether it be money, time, freedom, whatever, right? Big harvest, right? And maybe a lot of you, I would assume, haven't seen that big harvest that you've been looking for. Is that right? Am I on the right page? Right. So I want to correlate the proper steps that you need to have, that you need to do in order to have a big harvest. Okay? So first, you have two options. Okay? So before you have the big harvest, first you need to choose one of the two items, or one of the two options. Okay? You need fertile ground, right? You need the proper, you need land, right, to be able to plant the seeds and everything like that. And it's got to be the right climate, right? It's got to have the right rain and the right amount of sun, temperature, you know, everything like that, right? It can't be too cold, it can't be too hot. So first option is you could basically find your land where someone else points it, right? So that would be like Primerica or something like that, where they're like, hey, it's an MLM type stuff, right? Where they're saying, all right, we're going to sell to your friends and family. We're going to go to the gas stations, and every time someone gets out to pump gas, we're going to approach them, right? We're going to go to the malls. We're going to teach you the old school prospecting, right? And there's millions and millions of dollars that in life insurance that's produced through that model. It's not for me. It's not for a lot of people, but you know, I'm not going to knock it, because a lot of insurance is sold that way. It's just not something I would want to do. But that's one option, right? They're basically saying, hey, the field is over here, right? The best field is right here. But it's already been cultivated. They've already removed the rocks. They've already fertilized it, right? They've already cultivated it, so to speak. But guess what? Because they've been doing it for so long, when you plant your seeds in the same field for years and years and years and years, over and over and over, you want to know what happens? Guess what? Over time, the fruits, so to speak, or the, you know, let's just say that we're planting corn, okay? Because I'm from Iowa, so there's a lot of corn that's planted in Iowa. So if you're planting corn and you plant in the same field over and over, and you don't give it a break, you don't give nature enough time to replenish the soil, okay, in ways that it needs to be replenished. Now, there are ways that you can bring a truck in with a bunch of cow manure, right, and you can fertilize it that way, but there's just something about letting the earth replenish it itself, Okay, so even if you replenish it by hand, an unnatural way, it's still not going to do the right trick. Okay, so whether it be MLM, let's say mortgage protection, right? That's another niche. Let's say final expense, FE. That's another one. So these people are saying we have this, we have the field right over here. This is where the best field is, but which is nothing wrong with that. That's what you need to be successful. You need somebody that has had success, someone that has a niche, someone that has a method, that can have the confidence to say, hey, this works. Let's go over here to plant your seed. I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it. But again, the problem with, and these are just examples, but these are probably the most popular, right? Like Primerica, and then all these different IMOs that are doing mortgage protection and or final expense, right? But again, the problem is they've done the same thing in the same place, right? They're planting their seeds with the same people, with the same methods for so long that now you get into it and you start planting your seed, and guess what? The corn isn't as plentiful. The corn isn't as big as it used to be because they've given it no breaks. They've constantly just hammered and hammered and hammered. And in Iowa, you want to know what happens? And my grandparents actually are blessed enough to be a part of this program. They actually pay, the government will pay you, if you live in Iowa and you have land, they'll pay you not to farm, okay? You want to know why? And I'm going somewhere with this, okay? They'll pay you not to farm. And it's funny because my grandpa wouldn't farm anyway. He has no ambition to do it, but he has many acres in Iowa, and they pay him not to farm. You want to know why? Because the more farmers that you have, if they were to farm all of the land that's in Iowa, guess what? Supply and demand. The supply would be way too high, and all the farmers would make less. If there's more farmers, the more farmers there are, the less money all of them make. So the more multi-level marketing companies that are similar to Primerica there are out there, the less all the agents make. The more mortgage protection IMOs and agents that are out there, the less they make. The more final expense agents that are out there, the less each final expense agent makes, because there's only so much supply and demand, right? And then number two, if you are farming your land, you know what they do? They'll recommend you rotate your fields. There'll be some years where they, I can't remember exactly what it is. I want to say once every 3 years. Something like that. Don't quote me, but it's the principle is what matters, right? Every so often, let's just say 3 years, you don't want to farm in a certain property that you have. Let's say you have 1,000 acres. You want to rotate your properties, because again, if you farm it, if you plant every single year, it doesn't give the soil enough time to replenish, right? You're basically just stripping it of its nutrients too much, and then pretty soon nothing will grow. Pretty soon your corn gets smaller, and the corn husks, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then pretty soon they just don't do it at all. Nothing will grow. So you don't want that. So you want to rotate it. So that's what's wrong with option number 3 if you want to have a big harvest. Option number 2 is to go out there and find untapped land, right? To find untapped land. Land that nobody's ever farmed before, or not a lot of people have farmed before, right? And then number 2, and then in addition to that, what if you had better equipment? What if you found this fertile land, but you were able to have better equipment than anybody has ever had before? Do you think that you're going to make more money with option number 2 than option number 1? With old school equipment, right? And let me give you a visual illustration. Mortgage protection, the Primerica way, final expense. If you can see my screen, you're getting the full effect here. Look at this. This is what they're using, right? They don't promote you to get a dialer. You're using direct mail leads. Some of the oldest forms of marketing is direct mail. It's like something that they've done in the 50s and 60s, right? You're using a garden hoe to plant your seeds. Really, that's what it is. It's like you're in the 1800s. You're using tools that they used in the ancient times. I mean, Adam and Eve probably used a tool that was similar to a garden hoe. That's how old it is. This is what's always worked, right? Versus, that's what you're using to plant the seeds, right? Versus with Ion, this is what you're using. Using a big John Deere tractor with a machine on the back that you're dragging that plants all the seeds for you, right? You just got to jump in the tractor, turn on the ignition, and press the gas pedal and steer it straight. And as long as you can steer it straight, because we've found the fertile area, we've already gotten all the rocks out of it. Because when you go to a new field that's never been planted before, guess what? It's probably full of weeds. It's probably full of rocks, right? It hasn't been fertilized. So what we've done is we've gone out there and we've found the niche demographic, right? We went out there and we got the right scripts. We've tested all these different ways. We found the right dialer that works amazingly for the lowest cost. We found all the right technology. We got all the templates, right? So that's like us going there and taking all the rocks out, removing all the weeds, fertilizing it for you. That's what the system is like. But it's an uncharted, untapped field. We've already started the process, right? You just got to jump in the tractor again, turn on the ignition, and steer in a straight line so that the planter starts to plant the seeds. Now, if you're driving drunk or something, or you're being careless, and you go sideways, guess what? No, this tractor is thousands of dollars, tens of thousands. It costs a lot for this equipment. If you don't steer it straight, guess what? It ain't going to plant straight. And then your harvest is going to be all jumbled up. And when you get in the combine, and I'm getting ahead of myself, you jump in the combine and you try to reap the harvest, you have another machine that takes up the corn and does all that for you instead of going out there by hand. It's not going to work correctly, and you're not going to have as good of a harvest. So can you blame that on the tractor? It doesn't work. Farming doesn't work. That's what some people would want to say. No, I'm sorry, you were driving drunk, or you were careless, and you didn't follow the instructions, right? So no, you can't blame it on the tractor. The same thing with us. You got to follow the system, but as long as you drive it in a straight line, fill it up with gas before you get in, common sense stuff, right? Talk to your coach, schedule a coaching call as much as possible. Actually get on the phone and make the dials, right? Then guess what? Over time, you can have a tremendous harvest, right? Because you don't have to find the untapped niche. You don't have to go out and figure out where to get your own high-quality data. You don't have to figure out your own scripts, right? We've done that for you, okay? So what else do you need to have a tremendous harvest? What else do you need to have a tremendous harvest? You got to plant the seeds, and there's more to it, right? I've mentioned removing the rocks, removing the weeds, cultivating the soil. Cultivating, what that is basically, imagine if you're going to plant a garden in your front yard, right, and imagine you removed all the weeds, all the rocks, everything from the surface. Well, then you're going to have to take, and if you can see my screen again, you're going to have to take the garden hoe and you're going to have to break up the soil to make it, so it's soft, right? And you break up the soil and things like that. But if you want to have a really big harvest, you want to do that in a deep way. Because there's topsoil, the soil that's on the top, and then there's the soil that's below the surface. Now that soil that's below the surface is what you want to put. The process is called cultivating to get that soil onto the top. And the reason you want to do that is because that is the soil that has the most nutrients. Okay? Because the topsoil, that's the soil that's been beat up by the rain, and when the rain goes on it through several years and over time, it washes away a lot of the nutrients that you want when you plant your seeds. So you cultivate to get that bottom soil that has most of the nutrients mixed up with the topsoil, right? So you can definitely have a better harvest, right? So after you cultivate, then you want to plant the seeds. Now, if you don't plant a lot of seeds right now, then guess what? Months down the road, and we're talking in the natural again, right? We're planting corn seeds. If we're planting corn seeds, come about October, August, right? Guess what's going to happen? There ain't going to be much corn if you don't plant a lot of corn seeds right now, right? So it's the same thing with us. If you don't get on the phone and make a lot of dials, that's what basically planting the seeds is, when you generate your leads, okay? Cultivating is making the dials. First, you got to cultivate your land that we've already found for you and everything like that, okay? Then secondly, you got to plant the seeds, and that is, right, using the cold call script. Once people answer and say, hey, we're selling life insurance, do you want a quote, you want more information, so on and so forth, right? And every seed that you plant, that's a lead, right? But if you don't generate the leads, right, several months down the road, so to speak, if you're in the natural, there's not a lot of corn that's going to be coming up, right? So you got to make sure you plant a lot of seeds if you want to have a big harvest. Does everybody understand that? Big harvest, first you have to cultivate a lot, and then you have to plant a lot of seeds, right? Secondly, what has to happen after you plant the seeds? What has to happen after you plant the seeds? Well, after you plant the seeds, you want to make sure that you give it enough sunlight, number one, right? You have to have enough sun, not too much, because if it's too much, then it's just going to make popcorn out of your corn seeds. And you're just going to have a bunch of popcorn instead of corn husks. Is that right? So you don't want to have a lot of popcorn. You want to harvest. So you have to have just enough sun, not too much. And then you want to have water. That way the photosynthesis process can happen. Okay? The sun and the water, guess what that is with our system? So I talked in the natural, now let's talk business. What that is, the follow-ups. The sun, guess what that is? That's the automated emails that go out, right? The get response. Guess what the water is? That's your follow-up calls. So let's say you did everything perfectly. We found the right field for you. We got to fertilize. We taught you how to cultivate your field. Nobody else has planted here, so you're excited. You went out there and you cultivated a lot. You planted a lot of seeds. But then you don't allow your seeds to have any sun or any water. Come harvest time in August or October, are you going to have a harvest at all? Yes or no? Well, of course not, right? Because it's a natural process. It has to happen. They've done a lot of genetic modifications, but they've never made it good enough to where you can plant a seed in Antarctica, right, and have a tremendous harvest. It's just not going to happen, right? Here on planet Earth, you have to have the right amount of sun and the right amount of water, right? So if you don't make your follow-ups, can a month down the road, can you message me on Slack? Hey, I haven't made any money. This doesn't work. That would be crazy, right? A farmer can't go to any of his farmer friends and be like, well, why do you have a better harvest than me? I didn't get a single corn husk that came up this year. They're gonna be like, well, you planted everything in the shade. Like, duh, right? It's common sense. Same thing with us. You have to make the follow-ups. You have to do the emails and the follow-up calls, and whether you do text messages and all that other stuff. I'm just trying to simplify it here. You understand? But guess what? And then some of you want to know what, you kind of get too excited. You don't want to follow the process. And you say, man, I planted all this, I followed all the steps. But you know what? If I give them extra sun and extra water, I bet it's going to have an even bigger harvest. That's what some of you think. Even though in the university, we tell you have to have X amount of sun and you have X amount of water. We give you the formula. We give you the scientific formula that you need. But some of you want to create your own planet Earth, and you want to give it more sun and more water. Well, guess what happens? With too much sun, your field turns into a desert. It turns into popcorn, right? With too much water, you want to know what happens? It drowns your seeds. It goes down too much into the soil, and it starts to wash away your seeds. And then come harvest time, you're like, dude, I got nothing. So you start to dig in your soil and see what happened, and you don't even have any seeds in there. And you're like, what in the world happened to my seeds? Well, you gave it way too much water. You drowned them out. And so that's in the natural, right? In business, what is that? That's sending them too many emails, calling them to follow up way too many times. You got to follow the exact formula that we give you in the university. Is that right? All right. So what has to happen after that? So let's say you actually followed everything in the university. You did the proper steps. You got enough sun and got enough water, right? The perfect amount. You cultivated the right amount. You planted a bunch of seeds, more than enough. You followed the exact formula you need to have a tremendous harvest. And let's say it's August or October. Well, guess what? Now there's one last key that you need to have a tremendous harvest. There's one last key, and it's this. You have to know exactly when to pick your corn, okay? You have to know exactly when. You can't just go out there and say, wow, this corn's big, all right? Come on, boys, let's go pick it. It can't be like that. It's not just about that. It's not about waiting until it's ripe enough. That's not what it's about. You want to know what the exact thing is. In Iowa, what they do is they test the corn. They take a sample of the corn every single day around August and through October. They take it they send it into the lab, and they test it for the proper amount of humidity, okay, and things like that. And the reason why they do that is because they have these big silos. Does everybody know what a silo is? Let me bring up a corn silo here on my screen. Basically, what a silo is it's the I don't know what you call it. It's a metal thing that they pull up the tractors to, and they fill it. That's where they store the corn. Okay, That's where they store the corn until they can find the highest bidder to buy their corn. Okay, the farmers. And so what happens, and here I brought up a picture of a silo. If you don't test your corn, you just say when you feel like it's big enough, you just go and take it, and you don't test it for the humidity and things like that. You want to know what happens? You put it in the silo, and it explodes. It turns into popcorn. It ruins your entire harvest if you do it too early or too late. That's why you have to test it to find the exact time to harvest. Okay? And so, what that is, nobody knows. You just have to test it every day. And so that's why, with the ion sales system, okay, well, let me back up. That's why with other systems, right, let's say the mortgage protection and final expense, that's why when you get 20 leads a week, you call them, and there's some people where they're not ready for an appointment, or you go out there and you try to sell them, and you can't sell them a policy on the first call. And guess what they do? They teach you just throw away the lead. If they don't set an appointment, right? Or you can't sell them a policy on the first call, throw away the lead, it's a waste of time. Right? Well, guess what? That's what they're doing. They're basically just going out there and they're throwing the seeds into their silos whenever they feel like it on their own time, and half their crop is exploding, turning into popcorn. Even though they did all the work. You did all the work already. Why not wait and be patient until the perfect time so you can get the highest ROI on your leads and convert the most leads, right? But because they're not patient, they want to do it that way. And so that's why we do so much follow-up, okay? We never know when the proper time is. So you got to do the follow-up calls, okay? You do the follow-up calls. We're not pressuring people into it. You're going to convert more leads over time. Yes, it's more work. It's more work to go and take a sample of your corn and send it into the lab every day. It is a lot more work. It takes a lot more patience. But half your corn ain't going to explode before you can sell it to the highest bidder. So it's going to work out correctly. So that's why you have to follow the process in the university, where we say follow up every X amount of, and we give you a certain amount of days that you need to follow up. Between every follow-up call, there should be a certain amount of days. And I'm not going to tell you, because you should know it from going through the university, right? And by doing that, that's like us. Every time you follow up, it's like going out there and taking a test, a sample of the corn, and sending it into the lab. You never know what day is the proper time to make the harvest. That's why you do the follow-ups every so often, right? But when that perfect day is, the lab is gonna call you back, and the lab is gonna say, "Hey, it's time. It's a perfect time. Get out the corn pickers," right? And with some companies, this is what their agents are doing. They're getting out there by hand. They're getting out this big cart. They're walking out there and they're picking corn like this, and they're tossing. You see this corn right here? It's in the air. It's because he just tossed it over his head into the bucket. They took the picture with it mid-air. So which agent is going to make the most amount of money? The agents that go out and do this, pick it all by hand? Or the agents that got a big John Deere combine? Right? They have this machine. They just go out there, they line up the machine with corn rows, and as long as they keep it straight, you know what happens? They're able to pick the corn correctly, right? And then see, once they've picked all the corn, and you should look up YouTube videos on this. It's actually really fascinating how this machine, they just go about, I don't know, 15, 20 miles an hour, pretty fast, in my opinion. And I mean, they can just harvest like tons of acres a day, tons and tons of acres. Versus picking it by hand is just so much less effective. Once it picks it, it basically shucks the corn. Inside of here, if you were to climb up on top of the machine and look in, all you would see is basically kind of like just the corn. It would look like corn seeds, basically. That's all you would see in the back. You know, the hard corn kernels. There you go. That's all you'd see inside the machine. It pulls out all the leaves and the stalk and everything. All it leaves is the exact product that they need to sell. Isn't that efficient? Isn't that awesome? Okay. And then once they're done harvesting the field, or the combine is what they call this tractor. Once it's completely full, what they do is they go to the silo, right? Mm-hmm. Where's the picture of the silo? Here we go. They go to the silo, and you see this hole at the top? They take this. Where is it? And you see this tube that's coming out, the combine, this tube that's coming out the tractor? This kind of it's an arm that swings over up to the top of the silo, and they press a button, and all the corn just goes in. It's kind of like putting coins in a piggy bank. It empties it out in there, stores it, then it goes back out into the field. You can see the field in the background, and it starts to fill up again. Isn't that efficient? So which one would you rather do? Pick it by hand, or like Ion with our dialer and our lead system, unlimited lead system, right? Do this. Obviously, you would rather do this, right? So that's how you have a big harvest, guys. Let's recap. All the way at the beginning, okay? You have to know where the best soil is, the best fields are, right? Number two, it can't be a field that hundreds and hundreds of farmers have been planting in continually every single year and stripped all the nutrients. You're gonna have a harder time having a big harvest come harvest time if they've already planted in there, 20 years in a row. It's not going to work as good, right? So you're going to have to have an untapped field, okay? The problem with the untapped field is there's going to be rocks in there. You got to remove the rocks. You got to remove the weeds. You got to cultivate the soil, right? But once you do that, guess what? Then you fertilize. You plant the seeds. You have to plant a lot of seeds to have a big harvest at the end. You have to give it enough time, sun, and water, right? Once it's had enough time, sun, and water, you got to go out there and you got to test the corn, right? You have to send the corn into the lab every day, right around harvest time. You got to send it in every day into the labs. Once it's the perfect time to harvest, because you don't want your corn to explode once it's in your silo. Once you've made the harvest, you don't want to follow up too much on your leads. You don't want to pressure your leads too much, right? But once it's the perfect time, right? Guess what? You can have your combines go out and reap the tremendous harvest. And guess what? You don't have to go out there and do this all on your own, right? We have the exact formula for you, which is in the university. Don't try to recreate the wheel, right? Don't try to go out there and make your own combine. The John Deere tractors, they work just fine. Okay? Our sales dialers, it works just fine. Get response, it works just fine, right? That's our system. Now, am I saying that other dialers don't work or can't work as good? Yeah, maybe there's some out there. But why would you just spend all your time trying to find a better tractor or a cheaper tractor when we already got the tractors in line? You just got to grab the keys and put it in the ignition, right? And drive it in a straight line. And that's following the scripts, following up at the right intervals that we say to follow up, right? And giving it enough time, enough sun, enough water. Not too much, not too little, but the right amount. That way, come harvest time, you can reap a tremendous harvest. And that is why our top agents have made over $50,000 in 1 month off their personal production. Most other companies, you know what they say? Oh, our top agents are doing $20,000, $25,000. Ask them what the best agent ever in the history of the company have ever made. We're a young company, and I'm proud to say that, because our top agents have made such a huge amount, and people are skeptical because of that. But once you understand the system and you understand everybody's picking the corn by hand. Everybody else in the industry is picking corn by hand. And we got a machine that picks the corn for us, 100 times faster. So of course the farmer that has the proper machines is going to pick more corn, right? It's a no-brainer. But if you don't understand, if you've never thought, if you never even knew that this kind of tractor even existed, of course people are skeptical, right? If they're used to picking it by hand and they don't know about it, well, that's on them. So that's why our agents do so well. But you got to go in and you got to plant the seeds. Even if you have all this equipment, you're living in Iowa, you have all these acres, you can't have all this equipment, everything in line, and then not plant the seeds. You can have all this equipment, do everything else, and not follow one of the steps, and at the end of the harvest, guess what? You're not going to have a tremendous harvest. You may have nothing. You may join our company and make no money. What? People actually join ION and make no money? Absolutely, because they don't plant no seeds. They don't drive their tractor in a straight line. They give their seeds a gazillion times more water than what we say that you need to do. So of course, if they don't follow the proper natural laws of the harvest, of course they're not going to have a harvest, right? Don't recreate the wheel. Do it how we told you to do it. That's why you joined our company, so you can have a system, right? So I hope this was encouraging. I hope this really made you make sense, or make you understand, and made the system make sense to you, and why it works, why it's very key to do certain things in certain ways, right? Because if you want to have a big harvest, you have to do what others have done to have the big harvest, right? So let's open it up to Q&A. All right, it doesn't have to be exactly the question doesn't have to do with this exact lesson or message that I've shared with you today. It can be in regards to anything that has to do with ION or selling life insurance or any type of insurance, right? There's no dumb questions. So if you want to ask a question, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to be logged into the webinar, and you're going to have to type a message, okay, into the chat. All right? So go ahead and do that whenever you're ready. And if nobody has any questions or anything like that, that's no problem. We can end the call. And if anybody has to go, that's no problem. You can go ahead and get off the call now if you want to get back on the dialer and back to making money. But if you want to wait and attend the Q&A here, that's fine too. So who has a question? And by the way, I don't have it set up to hear anybody. So if anybody is trying to ask a question through your mic, I don't have the audio set up because I don't want to be distracted by someone that didn't mute their phone. So go ahead and type a message in the chat within the webinar platform if you want to ask a question. And if not, we'll go ahead and end it. Going once. Going twice. I guess it was that good. I guess I got you mesmerized. I guess it was that good to nobody has a question. No problem. Awesome. You guys have a great day. I will see you back on the dialer. God bless.